Hello, and welcome to this BNEWS special report. I'm your host, Rich Halsford. I think a lot of people probably think that over the summer, schools are pretty much shut down and everybody goes home. But that is, as someone who works here at Burlington High School, definitely not the case. My guest today, Director of Operations for Burlington Public Schools, Bob Cunha, is here to talk about all the things that have been going on this summer to get ready for this, once again, kind of unique year. Bob, thanks for taking some time.
Thanks a lot, Rich. First and foremost, let me address the fact that, as we all know, this year, the pandemic threw everybody's life in a spin. That doesn't change what needs to happen during the summertime. Our clerical staff and our custodial staff are here. Our admin staff is here as well, too. So again, while we don't have the teachers and the students here, like you said, there is a lot of work that happens during the summer. As far as the buildings go, the biggest thing is really taking the existing classrooms, the hallways, the gym floors, things like that, stripping them down and refinishing them, wiping down everything, and really just getting the building back to its shiny, sparkling self for the first day of school.
Yeah.
So.
And how has this summer been going? And does it look a little different than other years?
Not exactly. I mean, the summer really kind of looks the same. I mean, like I said, with a condensed staff, the staff that is here is really just tasked on really focused on the tasks that they have at hand, so it does look about the same.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, every year they pull all those desks out, clean the classrooms, put everything back together before the students arrive. So it does look like a lot of work.
Oh, it definitely is. So.
Are there anything in particular being done to address COVID? I don't know, like maybe filtration or air movement, things like that?
Thanks, Rich. I'm glad you brought that up. So while we do it every year, we do go through and look at our HVAC systems and replace filters twice a year as a minimum anyways. Because of COVID, some extra measures went into place. So again, not only did we go through each and every single HVAC system, whether it's in the classroom or on the roof, we upgraded any filters that we could to higher MERV ratings if the system was capable of it. We went through and optimized any of the fan settings on them just to make sure that we could really bring in fresh air. That's one of the focuses with HVAC systems during the pandemic, is really bringing in fresh air. Most HVAC systems are kind of designed to be really efficient, which means they want to recirculate some of the air that's in the room and not really mix outside air too much. But again, that's not really the scenario that we want, especially during the pandemic. So again, let's use the winter as the extreme. If you have the univent or the windows open, you're going to have a lot of cold air coming in, but now you're really trying to heat that room plus the cold air. So the systems have to work a little bit harder. But again, for the safety of the staff and the students, that's what we're working on.
And what impact, is having all the students back, nobody learning remote anymore, on how you're sort of preparing for this upcoming year?
Same exact as last year, right? The difference with last year is that a little bit was unknown. While the pandemic is still unknown to us, a lot of the strategies we've put in place. So that means, like I said, HVAC systems, fully maintained, fully operational, bringing fresh air into the systems. We've also put air purifiers in every single classroom and teaching space, and most secondary spaces as well too, including main offices, libraries, places like that where larger groups of gatherings would get together. Individual offices may not have a purifier, but especially if they have a window, they're still going to get the fresh air and the mixtures needed to have a safer environment. And then social distancing and mask wearing. As you can see, we have our masks on right now, where other parts of the state may not, but we're trying to get ahead of the curve. As it looks right now, we're going to have students and staff wearing masks when they come back. We're going to have social distancing to the best that we possibly can, meaning that we're still going to have desk space as far apart as we can. We're going to try to alleviate as much grouping as possible, and we just really want to try to keep people safe.
And now, do you still have the desks? Like, is there a minimum spacing between the desks that you're trying to aim for? I know it can be difficult, especially when you don't have anyone learning remotely.
No, that's a great question. So again, the guidance isn't officially set.
Right.
Last year it was 6 feet. So this year we're going to try to maintain that. And when I say try to maintain that, We did have some cohorts, A and B last year. We did have some remote students. So this year we're not going to have that, at least for the start of school. So that being said, we may have some that are 5 feet.
Right.
But again, I think that the social distancing is not a number yet, but we're still going to try to maintain as much as we can close to that 6 feet as possible. But definitely in all circumstances, we're going to be above 3 feet.
Okay, well that's good. And even, so how is lunch going to work, like at the different schools?
That's a great question as well, because we're still figuring it out. But what we do know so far is that we have the capabilities of, especially in the elementary schools, students can be eating lunch in the classroom, maintaining that 6 feet apart and not wearing their mask, eating lunch. In the high school and the middle school, we won't necessarily have the 6 feet in all circumstances.
Right.
So then what we'll have to do is use auxiliary spaces such as cafeteria and the gymnasiums if need be, but definitely the cafeterias just to put the extra students and spur them out.
Right. Now, last year when you went into the schools, it was always like, like different students are using different entrances, and a lot of the hallways were one direction to kind of like keep people from, coming across each other and really crowding. Are those in place, or are there any discussions about bringing any of those measures back?
Discussions definitely are happening,
Yeah.
but they're not in place now. So because of what we talked earlier about with custodians stripping the floors and cleaning them all up, a lot of the signs that were on the floor and stickers that were on the floor had been removed, and now
Right.
new surfaces have been put down. Some signs on the wall are still available, and we do still have signs in inventory that we could use. Again, there's not a lot of world restrictions out there right now, and as far as, like, let's say transportation and whatnot, the restrictions aren't really the same as they were last year. So in general, you will see people, slightly gathering a little bit more, but wearing masks, while they're entering in the buildings. I think some of the principals are going to make some decisions as to where the buses are being dropped off or where parents are loading kids, but that has not been finalized yet.
Right. Now, and this is slightly off topic because it's not buildings, but you did mention transportation.
Yeah.
And I know that's sort of like in your wheelhouse.
Wheelhouse.
So, what are the plans? I know that there are no like real restrictions, but what's going to be different than last year?
So what's different from last year as of right now, again, we're going on the existing guidance. We
Yes.
don't know if there's new guidance,
Right.
but as of today,
Right, August 12th.
as of today, August 12th, it's mask on the bus, and there's no restrictions on capacity. Whereas last year there was a capacity of approximately 30%, and students had to sit one per seat. So that limited the number of riders that we could have.
Right.
As of right now, today, August 12th, there's no limitation. So that means potentially we could have up to 71 passengers on the bus, even though we don't normally have more than 50 on a bus max anyways. But again, would be wearing masks. If regulations change, we'll obviously have to address those. Right now we're building routes based on what we know.
Right. And going back to the school's policy or the department's policy of any student can have a bus ride if they want one.
Yeah, it's a school committee policy and definitely something that we're proud of. We would definitely want to offer a ride to every single student in Burlington. So we populate the buses based on every student taking the bus. If they choose not to, that means we have extra capacity on there, but we do plan and anticipate a seat for every child.
Right. And are there going to be like safety measure, like keeping windows open on the buses, things like that?
Again, yeah. So as of right now, windows need to be cracked open. During the winter months, if the heater's running, same thing, windows need to be cracked open. If we have lower capacity on the bus, we will try to separate the students as much as possible. But again, without the restrictions right now, you could have multiple students in a seat. But again, as of today, we'll see.
Yeah. And is it being advised, like if you have two siblings, they should sit together or anything like that?
It's something that we would advise, not
Yeah.
something in the current guidance. So
Right. I know there's been a little bit of lack of communication from the state level is what I'm guessing or gathering.
yeah, I think there's a lot of different opinions at the state, so I don't even want to give my opinion. Again, I know that at a bare minimum, we're looking to follow the rules that the state sets, but we don't want to just be the bare minimum. If we see an instance where we can obviously provide more safety, then we're going to look to do that as well. So,
Okay.
I don't think we're looking to limit busing because that creates a lot of problems for parents and students. But again, I don't think we're looking to cause any impact on ridership.
Right. So, I think we've covered anything else in the realm of COVID that we haven't talked about?
Nope. As far as COVID goes, same procedures that we're always going to recommend. Not touching your face all the time. Definitely not like coughing in people's directions, wearing your mask, as much as possible when you're in the vicinity or in the building. We're going to have hand sanitizer stations throughout the buildings like we did in the past. We'll be sanitizing and using state-approved chemicals for cleaning our surfaces and disinfecting. So, that's still going to stay in place regardless of COVID or not. Like I said, we'll be doing CO2 testing and HVAC testing throughout the year to kind of make sure that our levels are good and our air quality is good. No, I think that's it.
All right. I know not everything is circles around COVID or the pandemic, so I know there's other things that are in the works. One of the things that was talked about at a recent school committee meeting was, and even though it's not really much that the schools I think can do about it, but it's like this new issue we have with the town's water. What is the department doing to sort of, work with the DPW or anything kind of on that front?
Well, again, I think the town's DPW and the town's water department does all the work, so we should credit them. They provide a lot of information and a lot of testing for the schools and the residents of Burlington. There was an instance where there was a boil order over the summer. That was cleared up, and the message came back that the water was good to go after that. Recently, we've had a new state, I don't know if the word is regulation, for PFAS, a chemical that's been found in some local waters around here, not just Burlington.
No.
So what that is that, and I'm not an expert on the chemical, but other communities besides Burlington have this in there. Our level did not raise. The state set the standard lower, which then put us in a predicament where we now have a higher level of the PFAS. But again, our level hasn't changed from what it was prior to that.
I think it's important to hit that point home. It wasn't something new that happened that made this is all from 30 years ago mostly.
Yeah. And again, like you said, not my area of expertise. So definitely, DPW and the water department, the information that they've shared with us, the communications that they've had with us, definitely helps us understand it more. But like I said, prior to the summer, prior to last week, like I said, nothing is different in the water in Burlington. Just the state regulations have changed. That being said, as far as COVID guidance goes, we did not have our bubblers working, and we actually encouraged staff and students to bring in their own either bottled water or water containers themselves. So you could not walk up to a regular bubbler and fill up our water. We just discussed at the recent school committee whether or not we were looking to do that again this year. And we will discuss it this week, but it looks like we will not be opening those waters unless something changes. And the reason for that is really people gathering or even going to the water bubbler, obviously any particles that splash from people's mouths, and just generally touching the same faucet over and over again doesn't really fit into best practices during a pandemic. So we want to try to avoid that. So we won't really be providing much drinking water or any drinking water from a bubbler perspective.
Right, so people have their own filtered water or bottled water. They won't be drinking the town water that has the higher than the state's recommendation. Or level that they said. I don't think it's a recommendation. So also, I know that there are certain capital projects that are in the works. What kind of things, progress on those have been made over the summer?
Yeah, I'm just gonna look at some of my notes to make sure I say them correctly. But again, this year we got funding for 4 projects. They're rather large projects. So one is the field, resurfacing the turf field at Burlington High School. That also includes resurfacing the track as well too. A lot of other towns had already been either in the process. So what we decided to do is wait instead of trying to push it through July because we couldn't really get a contractor on board fast enough.
Right.
So we're pushing it off to the springtime, which will buy us a little bit of time to make sure that we can get it done in a timely manner. So while we have the funding and we want to thank town meeting for that, that project is not underway yet.
Let's stay on that one for
Okay.
just a couple minutes, because I think there was there's a lot of discussion at town meeting as to why, people look at the field and they say, it looks great. But that's not really what you can go by, right? There's a certain test that has to be done.
Sure. And the thing is it's not specific to a turf field, right? So a grass field has it as well too. It's called an impact test, and basically what it is regardless of what part of your body, whether it's your head, your shoulder, or your knees, if you were to fall on the ground, obviously concrete is hard. If you were to fall on wet grass, it's going to be a little bit softer. But if you were to fall on cold, hard ground, again, that has a hardness. So impact testing basically takes a metal object, drops it onto the surface, and then that metal object has a sensor inside that turns around and it measures it. So they basically do 3 tests on the same spot, then they take an average of those 3 tests, and it tells you what the impact is. 200 is a high number, just for argument's sake. About 120-ish, give or take, is what a brand new turf field goes.
Okay.
So with that being said, if we were to test a field during a football game in November, right, we may have a high reading, whereas if we tested it in the middle of July, it would be a softer reading. That's naturally occurring anyways. A turf field is a little bit more predictable and not as susceptible to the heat and cold, so it doesn't really get softer and colder through the seasons. But what it does is over time, it gets compacted, between the rubber granules and the sand in there. It gets compacted. Some of it walks out when either on the students or the athletes' clothing or shoes and whatnot. So then you have to go back and fill it in. It gets compacted over time. We lose some, it gets compacted again. Long story short, after a few years, it gets so compacted and so tight, plus the fibers themselves, the green fibers that are sticking up that simulate the grass, start to wear down. And when you start to look at some of those averages of the impact testing and the overall wear of the fiber itself, that's when you can generally decide if a turf field either needs to be reconditioned or resurfaced. So in our case, we're looking to resurface it, which means peel up the fiber in the infill, put down new fiber and new infill. And of course, that's less money than building a new field.
Yes.
Because of the surface underneath and the draining system and all that, which is in good condition.
Okay.
So.
And now, it's my understanding if one part of the field fails one of those impact tests, comes back way too hot, above a certain level, then the whole field can't be used for school purposes.
Sure.
Right.
Right. Just like if one spot of your roof leaks on your house.
Yeah.
Right?
The whole roof is a little. Yeah.
The whole roof is susceptible and is still getting water in your house. So not to make a joke of the situation, but that's the same comparison. Impact testing doesn't say, well, you can't play on this part of the field, right? As the sport or whatever event takes place, all over the field. So if any part fails, there are some remedies that you can do over time, but at some point, even that remedy can't be, the resolution, right? So sometimes you can peel up and repatch a certain spot. Sometimes you can put new infill in or spread it out. We have the tools and machinery to do that, which is why we get the length of time out of it. Again, 7 to 10 years is practically industry standard when it comes to turf field. This is year 11.
Right.
I mean,
wow,
if
is it really?
Yeah. If it happened on year 5, there would be a question of either our maintenance or how much use of it. Year 11, I mean, there's really not many vendors out there that could ask for more.
Right.
So,
and how long is it going to take, do you think? Is there an estimate? It is a very well-used field.
Yeah, it could take up to a month to do both. They won't do them both at the same time, and I say both is the field and the track.
Right.
They'll do the field first and then move right onto the track just because of the way the equipment works. So approximately a month.
Okay. All right, now we can move on.
Okay.
What's next? Francis Wyman?
Yep, Francis Wyman, Intercom, same thing. That's something that, well, let me back up for a second, whether you cut it or not. But all of the projects right now, while we did get the funding, due to supply, due to inventory, and due to vendors, are being pushed off as far as when they're coming in or when they're being installed. But they're all underway as far as conversations, purchase orders, and the process that way. So the Francis Wyman Intercom, same thing. We have met with engineers. They're building the design specs right now. We roughly know what we want, but then we'll have to go out to bid. And it's really just a timing thing. So once we get the design specs back, we'll probably go out to bid in the next month or so, and we'll probably look for installation somewhere around December, January to start. And something like this we'll typically do after hours. So we'd have the crews come in after the students leave to start pulling wires and so forth.
And just talk about the need for a new intercom system.
The need is something that presented itself to us. The building was bought and renovated in 1996 and became an elementary school then. Since then, again, we've done wonderful maintenance to the building to make it the condition that it's in right now, but the intercom system is something that is 25 years old.
Right.
That being said, it's not the age of it, it's more the fact that as parts go, vendors don't have parts for it. So while we've had numerous repairs on it over time, it's been tough lately to find parts for it. We've had some zones that continually failed, and we knew it was time where it needed to be replaced.
Okay. So you said there was 4 in total.
Yep. So the last two, one is the weatherization. This is something that we were kind of waiting a little bit to make sure, but this is in conjunction with the town's DPW department and our Green Communities Fund. So the Green Communities gave us a grant in order to do weatherization at a couple of our buildings. Town meeting also gave us money to do weatherization. And what weatherization basically means is seals and rubber stripping for doors and windows. I know that sounds like a small task, but we have 1 million square foot of buildings, right? And we have 300 plus doors and windows and whatnot. That being said, as a green community, the idea is that we reduce our carbon footprint, right? Mm-hmm. So to use less electricity, less natural gas, and anytime you have doors and windows that are leaking, it makes the building inefficient.
Right.
So as part of a green communities, in order to receive additional funding on future projects, one of the prerequisites is that the building has to have up-to-date weatherization. So again, in conjunction with the town and the town's engineers, we had an audit team come out, look at all the town and school buildings. These are the reports that came back, and we're really trying to look to address that. And with the help of the funding from the green communities, and then help of the funding from town meeting, we're looking to kind of start that in the next couple of weeks. We had a kickoff meeting today. Town's making it pretty public that we're getting the funding, and again, there's some processes that we still have to continue with the green communities first before we actually get the funding in-house. So that's why I said in a couple of weeks we'll be able to start moving on that project.
Okay, excellent. So it makes the buildings more efficient, and it's better for the environment. So
correct. The last one is sanitary dispensers.
Yes.
Again, this is something that came up at town meeting. There were some lengthy discussions about it, but at the end of the day, we provide lots of products, whether it's napkins, toilet paper, tissues, and whatnot, whether it's in the classroom or in the bathrooms. And we previously had sanitary dispensers in a lot of our bathrooms in all of the schools, but before me and years ago, those products went away, those dispensers went away. We're really just looking to put those back. So we've asked town meeting to fund us the ability to buy all the dispensers, and then we'll build the products into our operating budget. So the dispensers have been ordered. I think we're ordering close to 120 or so in total. But again, due to supply and demand, we're not looking to receive those for roughly another 5 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Once they come in-house, we'll start doing installs as fast as we can. Our in-house team, along with the vendors team as well, we'll be looking to get some installs going quickly. And again, we have enough products coming that we believe should last us a year, and we'll have to kind of gauge what the use is so we can build that, like I said, into future budgets.
Yeah. I mean, yes, you mentioned there was discussion at town meeting, but I think it's a no-brainer right there. So I guess the last thing is just the big project on the horizon, and talk about first, the need for a new Fox Hill Elementary, and then where we are in the process and what's the next steps.
Again, I think the need is, if you are a parent of Fox Hill, then you understand what the need is. If you're a teacher of Fox Hill, then you clearly know what the need is. Not only is the building relatively old, the layout really doesn't do well for a classroom environment. That being said, the shapes of the classroom are odd, with the whole building looking like a snowflake from the top. The classroom is triangular shaped. They have movable walls that are made out of carpet, so they don't really enhance sound very well. And just generally, like I said, the shape doesn't lay well towards a teaching environment.
Right.
Also, the numbers of classrooms in the pods don't really lend themselves well to the number of classrooms that we have per grade. So breaking up grades is maybe not the biggest problem in the whole entire world, but it does add, to the impact of the classroom when you can't be next to either your friends or your other colleagues. So again, the building is definitely at capacity and has been at capacity for a while. That being said too, the benefits of a new building and the site that Fox Hill offers through the help of MSBA would definitely allow us a great new building there.
Right. So the town did, or the department did submit to the state, or like you said, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, and the initial phase was accepted, correct?
Correct.
How does this work?
So a couple of things. We submitted an application that basically says we think our school is eligible for possible funding from MSBA, Massachusetts School Building Authority. They did come back to us and say that while we agree your application is eligible, you are now in the eligibility phase. And what that means is that we have some questionnaires, we have some forms to fill out, and they give us about 270 days. And throughout those 270 days, they issue new forms for us to fill. That's anything from enrollment, we have to verify how many births per year in the town, any new buildings that are going up in town, anything that could potentially impact our enrollment in the schools,
right,
is what they're really looking at right now. Because what they don't want to do, MSBA or Burlington, is build a school for today that doesn't fit us tomorrow.
Right.
Right? So if we can kind of predict some of those things or see some of these trends, we want to try to get ahead of it and make sure that the data fits.
Right. So, I mean, so people have an understanding, if make sure that I understand it correctly, but we don't want to say, okay, we have this many students in town now, and then we'll just build for a little bit more, but not take into account like some big residential project that's coming in.
Perfect example, exactly that.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, that being said, we are in the eligibility phase right now. Like I said, up to 270 days. I did say up to. That means that we can complete some of the work prior to the 270 days, but that doesn't change us where we are in the process. In February of 2022, that concludes the 270 days. At that point, the board of MSBA would look at our data and then take a vote if we're able to move on to the next phase. The next phase would be the feasibility study, where we start actually bringing on an OPM, which is an owner's project manager. We start looking and working with design firms, and we actually look at the layout of the land, the size of the building that we need to go there, and designs of the building. But again, we're not there yet, so we really need to make sure that we're accurate on our numbers that we're giving to the MSBA, and we need to make sure that we hit all their deadlines.
Right. And people shouldn't expect that if everything goes well in February, that we're going to start seeing the current building being torn down next summer.
Yeah. Yeah, so they typically say 5 to 7 years is what the whole MSBA project takes. As I mentioned, 270 is 3/4 of a year already. So if we just started July 1, by the time we get to February, like I said, almost a year's gone by. The feasibility could take up to 2 years to figure out a design process. So potentially we could be 2 years before we even are thinking about digging a hole in the ground. Looking at a brand new building, I think you can all guess that they're not built in a week. So building could take up to another 2 years if there's no delays. So, that 5 years is I think a low estimate.
Yep.
But it's definitely something that, like you said, we would like to move forward with if given the opportunity.
Yes. And you have the building committee, so a lot of opportunity for public input between now and then too.
Yep, the building committee would, similar to the school committee, well, it's a separate committee. They're public meetings. So we'll advertise those when we do actually have them. Again, right now we have formed a committee because that's part of the deadline that we have to do. We have not had any SBC or school building committee meetings yet. But again, I think as we get further along in the process, there definitely will be a need to.
All right. Well, I think we've covered quite a bit, and as people can probably guess from the last half hour of conversation. You're a busy guy, so I appreciate you taking some time and coming down to BCAT and talking to us about all this.
Anytime, Rich. I appreciate the conversation.
All right. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.